This is the Capitol Rundown.
It's all nonsense. It'll all be proved false.
The thing you do is you point the guilty finger at the person who's pointing the guilty finger at you and say they're the bad guys in this, not me, and that back and forth is going to go on.
The Department of Justice has a lot of explaining to do as to why they did it, when they did it, how they did it.
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Siobhan Klepfer. It was an unprecedented week in politics in Michigan and in Washington. Not because of what happened in the political world, but because of what happened in the legal one. In Washington, the FBI searched the home of former President Donald Trump. They were looking for classified documents he might have stored there illegally. And we'll talk about that later in the show. But we're going to start with a story a little closer to home. A request by the Michigan Attorney General for a special prosecutor to handle the case against 9 different people, including the man running against her in November. Dana Nessel made the request of a special board about a week ago, and that's after an investigation into people who, she says, helped tamper with election equipment, including the Republican nominee for Attorney General Matt DePerno. DePerno has helped lead an unofficial investigation into the 2020 election results for almost 2 years now, and he told The Big Show with Michael Patrick Shields that he's not worried by the move.
It's all nonsense. It'll all be proved false, and it'll all be proven that she's doing it for political reasons to damage a political opponent.
But documents in Nessel's investigation and a picture of DePerno with a voting machine posted on his own website suggests they've got the goods. Well, it's a story with a lot of moving parts and some big ramifications. So Jorma Moran sat down with Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic to walk us through it.
Tim, today I want to talk about Attorney General Dana Nessel and this, I guess, special prosecutor that she's requesting for someone who's trying to unseat her, Mr. DePerno. What's the big deal here?
Now we're looking at this. The Republican candidate for Attorney General, Matt DePerno, is under investigation by the State Attorney General's office for allegedly tampering with voting machines. He and 8 other people are implicated in this situation, which has now been referred by Dana Nessel, the current Democratic Attorney General, to a special prosecutor to look into the facts and figures of all of this story. And of course, Ms. Nessel is doing this because she's running against Mr. DePerno, and there's a potential conflict of interest, so she's turning it over to a third party, disinterested party observer to see what was going on. In the meantime, he's running for Attorney General, and if you're running for the Attorney General slot as the top law enforcement person in the state, you probably don't want your name dragged through the headlines that you may have done something illegal.
Well, kind of a no-win situation, though, for the Attorney General, because according to her team, there was some wrongdoing going on here, and I think obviously those who may not want her to be the Attorney General are going to try to use this as a political move. What do you say?
Sure. Well, the DePerno people have already done that, and you're very astute to make that conclusion. The thing you do is you point the guilty finger at the person who's pointing the guilty finger at you and say they're the bad guys in this, not me, and that back and forth is going to go on. But that's the plea from the DePerno folks, that she's the bad guy here, basically playing politics to make him look bad.
Are there any Republicans right now kind of saying, DePerno, you're making things difficult on us right now?
When he got the nomination, there was some grumbling in the early spring meeting of the Republican Party. There were a number of people that simply did not want him, because of his political baggage, quote unquote, to get the nominations. But the grumbling continues in the backwaters of the Republican Party over the DePerno nomination, and whether it's just a doomed effort on his part to unseat Ms. Nessel.
Tim, always great to talk to you. We appreciate it.
And thank you, Tim and Jorma. Coming up next on The Rundown, a group turns in a controversial petition that might pass before you ever have a chance to vote on it. We'll explain when The Rundown returns. A new petition could pave the way for public funding of private schools, even if most people oppose the proposal. A group called Let My Kids Learn submitted more than 500,000 signatures on a petition that would establish a scholarship. People could use that money to pay for private schools, and anyone who donates to the scholarship fund would get a tax credit. Critics say they're trying to get around a constitutional ban on using public money for private schools, and that it would end up taking money from public schools. When asked if they'd support the plan, a poll by the Lansing-based firm Epic MRA says almost half of Michiganders would oppose it. And when given some information designed to sway them, that number jumps to almost 2/3. When asked whether the legislature should approve it or whether it should be on the ballot, a whopping 92% of those polled say the public, not lawmakers, should decide. But it might not get that far. Petition organizers want the legislature to approve it, precluding a public vote, and it would not be subject to the governor's veto. Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic breaks down the politics with the man who did the poll.
Is this the sort of thing that voters would look at and say, look, at you denied us a chance on this, we're going to take it out on you? Is there a possible?
That's exactly what I'm saying. With 92% saying they want their legislator to vote no, so they'll have a chance to vote on it. And the biggest reason, most convincing reason why people oppose it is there aren't that many private schools. And in a lot of the rural areas, you're spending $7,800 giving it to a private school student somewhere else, because most of the areas don't have that.
I know it's not your job to advise lawmakers what to do, but if they asked you, you would tell them, if you vote yes on this, you could put yourself at peril.
In danger, yes.
No question.
Well, especially if their opponents use it and communicate it. If they don't, then no one will ever know about it. But if they use it, it will have an impact. Not only that, but with the proposal to allow funding for private schools, Whitmer has the ability to connect her to DeVos, and DeVos is probably more unpopular in Michigan than Donald Trump is.
And we'll stay on top of this story for you and let you know how it turns out. Still ahead, we have more of that conversation between Tim and our pollster. They'll talk about the messages our candidates for governor will try to send over the next 3 months. That's when the Rundown returns. Welcome back. Turning to the governor's race now, where Democratic incumbent Gretchen Whitmer and Republican challenger Tudor Dixon are working on the messages they want to send to voters about themselves and each other. Our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic continues his conversation with pollster Bernie Porn.
Who has the stronger message that plays best, particularly with independent voters?
Well, one thing about the messages you asked about for Dixon is that they have already been judged. And at one point, when the closures and the mask requirements first started, don't forget that Trump was attacking Whitmer, and her numbers were very, very high. People approved of what she was doing. And then they became frustrated not being able to go out, and the numbers started to move against her. However, she has now recovered from that. So it is almost attacking her on something that is old news, whereas her attacks are not going to be old news.
My guess is Dixon is not going to give up on this COVID thing, because the angle that she's taking, that she hopes will resonate particularly with women, is the impact that the governor's decisions had on the children in school or not in school, and the mental health problems as a result of that. Would that resonate with moms?
It could potentially resonate, and there is a group of voters that are upset. However, we have done surveys in school districts where that is a very minimal number of voters that look at critical race theory and are really upset about the schools being closed. And so it is not going to have, I think, the resonance that she expects, or she probably hopes.
Dixon, it is going to be tough for her to pivot on these issues where she was locked in order to win that Republican primary, and now suddenly move to the center. Can she do it? Can she pull it off?
Well, when she is not as well known as she would need to be, it's kind of difficult to get well known and convince people that, oh, what I said before, I have now changed my position. This is my position. I don't see how you do it because you know that the Whitmer campaign and the Democrats are going to remind people constantly of what she has said in the past. And the Democratic Governors Association have already done that with the quote on the no exceptions for abortion. And that is a very powerful issue. That is more powerful than inflation or anything else.
Coming up next on the Rundown, we move from Michigan's capital to the nation's capital. We'll talk about the Democrats' big win by a small margin and what it will mean for Michiganders. We'll be right back. Congress doesn't typically work on the weekends, but last weekend was an exception. Senate Democrats were eager to pass the Inflation Reduction Act, and they did. Barely.
The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the bill, as amended, is passed.
Vice President Kamala Harris broke a 50-50 tie in the evenly divided Senate. While it was billed as a plan that would reduce inflation, there's a huge investment in alternative energy to help slow climate change. And the bill will also save some people thousands of dollars in health care costs. Republicans aren't convinced the measure will reduce inflation and are upset about the taxes on businesses that will help pay for it all. But after staying up all night to get the bills passed, Michigan Senators Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters say they're proud of what's in it and it will make a real difference for Michiganders.
This is really significant for Michigan families.
So one of the central focus of this bill is to reduce costs to Americans. We know that one of the significant drivers of inflation and cost for Americans across our country are rising prescription drug prices. Debbie and I have been fighting for years to bring down prescription drug prices, and now we have made a meaningful step forward by allowing Medicare to negotiate with drug companies for lower prices.
We pay the highest prices in the world. So this bill directly takes on Big Pharma and the Republicans standing with them, and will begin to lower costs for people in this country, particularly our seniors and people with disabilities on Medicare. The other group we took on is big oil companies, and to tackle energy costs and electricity bills and the climate crisis, which is very, very real.
And so we're doing the right thing by the environment. And we're also doing the right thing when it comes to creating good paying jobs in Michigan as well as across the country.
Are tackling energy costs for those in rural Michigan, working with our rural electric co-ops and creating jobs there. And this is a major, it's the largest investment ever in supporting our farmers and our foresters to aggressively deal with carbon pollution.
Stabenow even brought the Secretary of Health and Human Services to Michigan earlier this week to celebrate something she's longed for, the ability to negotiate with drug companies and buy in bulk to help save taxpayers and patients a lot of money.
In fact, we probably pay roughly about 3 times more for our prescription drugs than most other countries in the world. 3 times. And the worst part about that is, at least for Medicare, is that the government, the federal government, which operates the Medicare program, has been prohibited from trying to get a better price.
Now, as we said, the new law means that Medicare can negotiate for that better price. Coming up next, we'll talk about the story that shook the political world this week. The FBI's search of Mar-a-Lago. We'll tell you what a former FBI agent is saying about the move. That's when the Capitol Rundown returns. Now to the story that had the whole nation talking. A former president who had his home searched by the FBI. Agents went looking for classified documents they believed Donald Trump had stashed in his home in Florida. As an FBI agent, Andrew Arena served search warrants on mayors and members of Congress, but this search, he says, takes the cake.
This is certainly new ground we're walking on here. So this is, as I said, you talk about the pinnacle of sensitivity. a former president, that takes the medal. The Department of Justice has a lot of explaining to do as to why they did it, when they did it, how they did it. I'm not saying they were wrong, but like most Americans, I want to see what the reasoning behind this was.
And late Friday afternoon, we learned about some of the documents that the FBI took from Mar-a-Lago. The documents were unsealed after the Attorney General said he thought it was in the public interest and because Mr. Trump publicly acknowledged the search. The former president himself actually encouraged the release of those documents, so a judge let it happen. Here's Skylar Henry with what they revealed.
The search warrant and an inventory of what the FBI took from former President Trump's Florida home is now public after a federal judge followed through with the Justice Department's request to unseal the documents. The records show that agents were directed to seize items marked as classified or related to national security. They were also told to look for evidence that official records had been altered, destroyed, or concealed. The property receipt shows the FBI retrieved 11 sets of records during Monday's search at Mar-a-Lago, including some labeled top secret. Attorney General Merrick Garland asked the court to release the warrant and inventory after Mr. Trump condemned the search as a politically motivated raid.
The department filed the motion to make public the warrant and receipt in light of the former president's public confirmation of the search, the surrounding circumstances, and the substantial public interest in this matter.
These documents do not include the FBI court filing that convinced the judge to sign off on the search.
The real story will be with the release of the affidavit itself, which is not currently planned to be released. It is filed under seal.
Several media organizations, including CBS News, have asked the court to make the affidavit public. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
And if you're interested in getting more political news from Michigan and Washington, sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just one email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. It will take you to the sign up page. And that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown.